us through the little break here. We're all set up in a conference room. And as we left the show at 10 a.m., my big question was, I guess, can you be pardoned from a crime that you haven't committed or that you haven't been charged for? Because that's one of the things that I don't understand about the whole Biden situation.
Yeah, it hasn't been tested. It has not gone through the legal system. So it's a preemptive pardon. You have not been accused of anything. So what are you being pardoned? So there's two aspects to it. There's a legal aspect to it, and then there's the practical aspect to it. You know, why would you accept a pardon? I mean, it's happened where people said, I didn't do anything wrong. I don't need a pardon. For what? What am I needing a pardon for? So there's that aspect to it. Why would you accept a pardon if you did nothing wrong? Now, if you truly believe that someone's going to make something up, if look, put it this way. Again, this is the way my mind works. Knowing what Trump knows now, when he left office, if he would have been offered a pardon, would he have taken it?
Well, obviously, his...
Microphone for you.
Oh, obviously, his attorneys would have probably told him no, right?
I don't know. I mean, I wouldn't have said no. I would have said, well, hold on, what do we think is going to happen? Knowing what you know now, you know you're going to, you know you're going to go through this shit. You know they're going to falsely accuse you. You know they're going to be this. You know all this can happen. Do you want a pardon or not? I mean, there's a practical aspect to it, too. So...
But if you say, I didn't do anything, you'll never accept a pardon. If you say,
I get that. Well, let me give you an example.
Okay.
Many times agents will come in or government will come in and say, we're going to accuse you of this. Do you want to work out a deal? No. Well, if you don't work out a deal, look, we're gonna prosecute your parents, your wife, you're this, you're that. Hold on. Okay, look, I'll work out something. Now, he may have said, go piss on yourself. I'm going to fight it if you're just coming after me. Now, I'm not saying that's ethical, moral, and maybe there's some colorableness. There's something they could attach your family members to. Whether it's strong or not, it's another story. I mean, there's so many factors here. All I'm saying is, as a lawyer, if I was Trump's lawyers, I would say, look, you have to consider this. You have to. I mean, you're going to go through this, or you can be pardoned. But I didn't do anything wrong. I get it. If you want to stand on principle, I'm your guy. Let's go. But my job is to explain your legal situation to you. So do you want? So all I'm saying is, just because they took a pardon, I get that everyone would say, why the hell would you take a pardon? They're guilty. Maybe, maybe not. I mean, I think it leans towards it. I think it stinks. I personally, all those people that got pardons, I'm not fans of them, but I'm trying to keep my lack of liking them away from my objective analysis. Fauci is a piece of dog shit, so I would not be a good juror for Fauci, even though I probably would be, well, I take that back. If someone proved to me that he didn't do the things that I believe he did, I would do the right thing, period, end of story.
Yeah.
But I think he's an opportunistic, very flawed morally person.
And we also know he lied before Congress.
Yeah,
I mean,
that's a fact.
That's inarguable.
Yeah.
We know that. We have emails to testify, specifically on the gain of function, acting like he didn't know anything about it, when in fact there were agreements put in place where the NIH was working directly and had contracted Peter Daszak, who presides over, what's going on? You guys are way...
A little bit separate, just a little bit.
Little what?
Closer.
Just a little separate, a little bit.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. Forgot what I was saying, but it had something to do with the fact that he was working with Eco Health Alliance, was a third party that was actually basically brokering gain-of-function research with the Wuhan Institute of Virology in China. So we know he lied. I think he is just a piece of dog shit, that guy. I do. I think he's a complete criminal. Now, there's the question of these pardons and how they're structured. For me, Nico, how they're structured and when they were released. I mean, literally 15 to 30 minutes before the inauguration. Yeah. He knows that the media is caught up with all the festivities. So this was obviously very deliberate.
It was cowardly. It was cowardly.
Truly.
Absolutely.
I mean, it is what it is.
Well, he's a coward, so that
it was cowardly, but it was consistent to his character. So that's all I'm
consistent
saying.
with his character, indeed. What I thought was particularly interesting is how the things were structured. So it's preemptive, but everything seems to go back. Even with Hunter Biden, everything seems to go back to this magical year of 2014. And so you just got to sit back and say, what the hell was so special about 2014? And I mean, Biden obviously hadn't completely lost his mind yet. But there was, I mean, he's vice president of the United States. He's at the pinnacle of power in terms of influence. And it just leads you to kind of go back and investigate that. And you got to think, what was going on back then He was in his 6th year as vice president. If you remember, Obama comes in. It's an intense campaign. He and Hillary they're each other's throats. They each have their factions. She was probably going to be a threat to his nomination. There were people digging their heels in. So he gets together with her, brokers something, they negotiate something. She becomes his Secretary of State. And at the end of his 8 years, he decides he's going to, endorse her for president. Biden's invisible this whole time, if you think about it. That had to have stung. I mean, this guy wanted to be president. I don't care what he said after Obama's tenure. He said, well, Bo's death, I really need to process it. I mean, give me a break. I mean, he had lots of calamities happen in his life before. Didn't he lose his wife, his first wife, lost a child, the 2 sons were almost killed, and he ran for office then. So Biden's invisible. That had to have stung. Hillary Clinton is in the middle of this pay-to-play scheme with the Clinton Foundation. This has all been pretty much established by the House Oversight Committee. If you're Biden, what are you thinking? I mean, you're thinking, I should probably
start stealing some money.
Well, I mean, I got to get myself some of that.
Yeah.
The House Oversight Committee has uncovered shell corporations, money transfers. I mean, this is pretty much established. And who did he pardon? 5 family members. Who was it? It was Jim Biden, his wife Sarah, his sister Valerie, her husband John, and his brother Frank. And every single one of them are all over the Oversight Committee's investigations. So I'll tell you who's not pardoned, and that's Jill.
I was just going to
The doctor, Jill, non-doctor Jill Biden. I don't know. But why 2014? You got to think, this is when you start seeing activity happening in this giant pay-to-play scheme with pay-to-play scheme with foreign entities, and you start seeing if the House Oversight Committee work, and it's pretty elaborate, is accurate. You start seeing transfers. You start seeing shell corporations. And Jim Biden was a lobbyist at the time in D.C. He was a pretty well-known lobbyist. And it's not, quid pro quo is illegal. You can't sell services in exchange for something, but you can provide access. You can at least give access to Biden. In the case of Hillary Clinton, she was Secretary of State, perhaps a future president. So it makes sense. That's why the 2014 seems to make sense. It's basically an admission of guilt. It really is. But what about him? I mean, technically, Biden didn't pardon himself.
Yeah.
So what about him?
Well, I think they've tested that theory that special prosecutor came in and said, look, he did these things, but he's too old. I mean, no one's going to.
Oh,
I think
okay.
he made a calculated decision.
Yeah, I
on
forgot
that one,
about
not
that.
to mention that.
No reasonable prosecutor.
Maybe Fauci's too old too. Like,
Yeah.
is that really something to say?
Well,
They're
look
the
at
same
look at
age.
Millie. Look at Millie. I mean, they're trying to couch it under the guise of he's our political opponent and he's going to wrongfully prosecute us. So now you've opened up another. So they don't have a Fifth Amendment right to remain silent on those issues they've been pardoned on. So they can be subpoenaed to a congressional hearing or to some type of grand jury investigation.
And they can't plead the fifth?
They cannot plead. That's Fifth Amendment. They cannot plead the Fifth. And if they establish that they're lying to them, so it's either going to expose a bunch of shit, or they're going to subject themselves to perjury.
Yeah.
And if they perjure themselves, they can be prosecuted. If they don't show up, they can be held in contempt.
Yeah.
I mean, now, so we have this disproportionate treatment. This is why I really try to get people past the tribalistic mindset of my side is always right, your side is always wrong. We've got to stand on ideas. Our justice, I mean, I'm so passionate about the justice system because I think we've seen it when it's weaponized. And when we shortcut some of the principles that undergird the justice system, like due process and fundamental fair play and Lady Justice wearing a blindfold and making sure she keeps the scales tightly in her hand and her foot is firmly on the book of justice because she knows the laws that she's implementing. And she's stomping out evil, which is the snake. And she's holding a sword in her hand to be firm when it's appropriate. I mean, all that means something. It's emulated after goddess Themis in Greek. She was the goddess of order. I mean, obviously, I don't believe in Greek gods, but I'm just telling you that was the idea behind Lady Justice and why she's portrayed that way. I mean, so Eric Holder and Mayorkas, they were held in contempt, and it was referred to the DOJ, and they didn't do anything with it. But then you have Steve Bannon. Look, I have my issues with Steve Bannon, but I don't give a shit if I like someone or not. I'm not, and I can say this because I was in that position. I never made a decision because I didn't like somebody. because I'm held to a higher standard, Karen.
Right.
For me, I mean, everyone can do whatever they want. For me as a Christian, I believe much is given, much is to be expected. I believe that I'm going to give an account for everything I do when I stand before the Lord, the architect of the universe, which everybody's going to stand before. But I have to give an account for what he asked me to steward. And if you have that kind of authority, you've got to make decisions based off fact, laws, and truth. That's it. Or you don't have justice without truth. I don't give a shit what anybody says. No truth, no justice, no peace. Okay, great. But without truth, you have no justice. And without justice, you have no peace. But it's all predicated on truth. And that's why Lady Justice wears a blindfold, because she doesn't care who you are. She's listening to facts. She knows what the law is because her foot's on the book. She has a command over the law. And then she makes a decision and balances it all out, stomping out evil every chance you get to bring order to a society. That means something. It's part of my... So whether I'm a prosecutor or a defense attorney, that's what motivates me. And that's what I want back in our system. And I don't want Trump abusing it. I don't want Kash Patel abusing it. I don't want Pam, and I don't believe that they're going to. I'm just saying I don't want that. And I definitely didn't like, what they did during Biden's administration. And I think that there's objective evidence that can prove that it was weaponized. And I think it's horrible, and it was really a threat, truly a threat to our constitutional republic.
So Kathy asked the question, can you please explain how preemptive pardons can even be allowed?
Well, George and I talk about this all the time, or not all the time, but often. Well, can the government do that? And I always answer my client, are you going to resist and fight it? Well, no, then they can do it. I mean, so nobody's challenged it really, from my understanding. So, I mean, what are you pardoning? I mean, look, the president has broad power to pardon. And we're seeing it now on this side, with Trump doing what he's doing with the J6 pardons and other pardons, which the ones for the Catholic, the people for the abortion clinics, I mean, those were horrific. I mean, you got people that posted stuff online. I think I'm oversimplifying it. Like double life sentences plus 40, I heard.
That's
I mean,
ridiculous, yeah.
you don't give capital murderers double life sentences plus 40. No. I mean, it's just that is the imbalance. That's where the scales are off.
An overt targeting of individuals.
I mean, it's horrific. It should scare the shit out of people. I don't want it for anybody. I want people in charge that have fidelity to the Constitution. The Constitution is a guard against democracy, and I know people freak out when I say that. Democracy is the 51 choose how the 49 are treated. We're a constitutional republic. The one gets a say-so to the 49. That's a constitutional republic. I'm just simplifying it to people. So democracy is scary. One of the best analogies was when a teacher, a professor, I was watching this thing, and he told his class, how many of us believe that Billy here should buy dinner for us all year long? Everybody voted on it. And Billy's like, well, fuck, I don't believe that. He's like, no, I don't want that. It's like, sorry, Billy, we voted on it. It was fair. We voted on it. Nobody wants a democracy. I promise you that. Right. You don't. You want a constitutional republic. And so that's what we have. So our Constitution is a safeguard against democracy and against bad actors that want to weaponize the justice system or any system in public.
Yeah, unfettered majority rule is scary as shit.
Yes.
And it's been tried, and it didn't work out so well. I mean, Greece has lots and lots of, Greek city-states have lots and lots of examples where things didn't go very well, and it ended up in not peaceful outcomes, but just absolute anarchy. So no, and it's interesting that Trump doubled down on the concept of a republic in his speech, because we are, in fact, a constitutional republic. Representation actually matters, whether you're one person or 10 people. But this notion of a preemptive pardon, I mean, I don't know how it gets contested. I honestly don't. What would be the mechanism for contesting it? Because it does seem ridiculous on its face. I mean, it's a hypothetical pardon.
You would
Had you committed this, you're pardoned.
You would prosecute them.
Okay, that's how.
I mean, and then the courts would rule on it.
Okay, so that's really the question here. I mean, you have to sit back and say, are these legitimate, heinous crimes that would have been committed so that at least morally there's an imperative to pursue them? I would say perhaps that's the case. If I had to pick one, there's two individuals that I think really need to be held accountable some way. Anthony Fauci is one of them. I mean, what he did was draconian and grotesque and absolutely criminal. I mean, that guy is a total piece of dog shit. I have a tough time finishing a sentence without expletives when I think about that guy. And the other one's Mark Milley, former Joint Chiefs of Staff. And what that guy did was abjectly treasonous, and he has all but confessed to it. The idea that Mark Milley would reach out to a Chinese counterpart
That's ridiculous.
and tell the Chinese counterpart that in the event the President of the United States would call for some sort of military activity, that he would basically preempt it. He would warn them about it. That's insane. And this is a guy who goes about saying that it was all about saving democracy. Those two guys, I think, look, there's ways to get Milley, and it's not that hard. Trump, by law, can call him back to military service, and he can humiliate him. And basically, and it's not just about humiliating him. I want to be very clear about what I mean by that. It's not just ha ha ha. It's not like that. Or just putting him back and basically exacting consequences that it will. I mean, it'll be truly humiliating. I mean, have him be an assistant to the postman. But the point is, we shouldn't be done with that guy. That's treasonous. Can you imagine if you? So can you imagine if anybody could do that? That's unbelievably dangerous. I think those two individuals, at least. We've already talked about Biden. I have an open question on Jill Biden. I'm wondering, in him not pardoning her, where does that leave us? Because she's certainly a gatekeeper in many ways, and so could she be prosecuted? Well, if there's any wrongdoing, but I don't know.
I know you're not suggesting this. We don't need to look for someone to prosecute.
No,
we don't prosecute people. We prosecute behavior. And so, but I do believe in accountability. So I speak about this all the time. There's 4 aspects to justice, and I think it's all biblical. There's revenge, there's retribution, there's restorative, and there's punitive. Right? Those are 4 aspects to justice. The Bible speaks of all of them. God uses all of it. Punitive is where you're just punishment only. You're just trying to deter behavior. I mean, there's punitive behavior, punishment in the justice system. Retribution is not revenge. That's why you have to make that distinction. Revenge is personal. Retribution is behavioral. Retribution is addressing behavior. Revenge is addressing a person. And then restorative is, okay, what does that do? That restores society back to order. And then there is also restorative justice, which has been bastardized by leftist-leaning hacks. But that's saying, okay, for certain allegations, how do we reincorporate someone who's offended and bring them back into society to help them be productive so they're not a drain on society? So there's a restorative aspect. The restorative justice peace model doesn't mean do whatever you want and no one gets prosecuted. It means hold someone accountable, make sure that the accountability is appropriate based off the allegation, and then reintroduce them back to society to where they don't come back. And it breaks this cycle of recidivism, the repeat offender mindset. So I like to focus on retribution. Retribution is when you think of, that's
Retributive justice is like for like.
Retributive, yes.
Yeah,
It's not too much, it's not too less. It's appropriate.
Yeah.
Now, there's mercy in there too, don't get me wrong, and I get that. And so mercy undergirds that, especially for a biblically minded person. But there are some people that are looking for stuff to prosecute these people for. Analyze behavior. Where does that behavior lead you? Oh, behavior leads you to Fulano, then prosecute Fulano. Oh, that behavior leads you to Fauci, then prosecute Fauci. Oh, that behavior leads you to so-and-so, then prosecute that behavior.
Yeah, and I'm not suggesting to use one of Trump's favorite references of witch hunt. I'm not suggesting a witch hunt. Let's throw a bunch of stuff at the wall and see who we get. But I bring up Jill Biden because she was just a gatekeeper. I mean, she was actually standing in for him at meetings. And
It's his wife. Is
Right.
she somehow left out of prosecution since she's married to the president?
Not necessarily.
Well, I'll let you answer that. But I was going to say, I wasn't even focusing on Joe Biden because I think he's off the table. But there's no such provision with respect to other family members. That's the point. And the family members are just a nucleus. There were a bunch of other actors who were supporting this. And man, if you go back to the whistleblowers, the IRS whistleblowers, and they were testifying and they were talking about Hunter Biden and how there was a deliberate effort inside the justice system to shield Hunter from retributive justice, if you will. And so I think that there's a cabal of people involved here, and I think that we have to restore faith back to the United States government. I mean, the President of the United States should epitomize justice, Nico. Should epitomize equal justice under the law. We can't allow bums in there who willfully and egregiously flaunt the power of the presidency like this. And these are the people who go around saying, no one is above the law. No one is above the law. Remember that?
Yeah.
Okay, well, this would be a really good time to sort of demonstrate that in opposite. So I don't know where this goes, but suffice it to say this is probably not a priority for Trump right now. I'm guessing. Or
but
maybe
that's-
he's leaving it to the Department of Justice to do whatever they think that needs to be done.
But didn't he learn something from not going after Hillary? I don't think he's gonna let any of this go, and it might not happen in the first 10 days, but I think he's gonna move forward.
I think he's leaving it to the Department of Justice, and I suspect that Kash Patel and
Pam Bondi.
and Pam Bondi are going to take it from here. That's where I think this is ultimately going to go. I think AG Bondi is going to take it from here, and I'm sure she'll do it. She'll do it right.
Look, but I do believe in accountability. So if there were things, and when I get into discussions with people, I was like, okay, replace Trump with Biden. Would you want him prosecuted? Replace Biden with Trump. Would you want him? I mean, you have to play that mind. That's how you have to think about it in your mind. I truly
Take the personalities out of it.
Yes, I mean, you have to look at the behavior, and then I'm going to keep on saying this. You're going to hear me say this until the Lord calls me home. Be careful the world you help create, because someday you may have to live in it. Now, could you use that phrase against Biden and Garland and all these people? Yeah, you could say, hey, you open this can of worm, you scrape that scab off, so now we can't put that scab back on. So now this is the new norm. Is that what we want? We never wanted it before. I mean, I thought it was interesting, to say the least, when all these senators were worried about, when they're asking potentially AG Bondi, about weaponizing the DOJ. I was like, why are you guys so concerned about it? Oh, wait a minute, because it just happened.
wanna know
Well,
what's-
it just happened.
right.
You saw it before your eyes, so you know it can happen. I mean, that's a legitimate criticism. And defend it if you don't think so. Well, no, they were just prosecuting these crimes and all this other shit. Okay, I guess. But then back it up with evidence. I think we just saw that it's horrible from parents in school board meetings to Catholics being labeled something to political opponents, to Pete Navarro and Steve Bannon. I mean, then why weren't Eric Holder and Mayorkas prosecuted? I mean, you can't tell me that if somebody does similar or the same violation, the same behavior that's under this statute, this person is not prosecuted, this person, unless you give me one damn good reason, then you're talking about selective justice and selective prosecution.
So when Dr. Fauci lied, obviously, about his connection to the gain of function testing that was done, and we all know what happened on how it all began in Wuhan and the labs. I know you said, Nico, not to go after revenge prosecution, but millions of people died from COVID. Who knows how many people died from the vaccine? Isn't there some sort of connection that you can have between what he did and how he...
You're talking about behavior. So if you're saying that someone's behavior or someone's willful disregard for the truth, knowing the possible outcome, knowing that people are in trouble, knowing, and then you put in a monetary motivation, still allowed this to happen, was reckless in their behavior, well then if you have a reckless statute and you can tie that reckless behavior to Fauci, then prosecute him. I'm fine with that.
But for what?
Well, I don't know what the statute would, I'd have to analyze the statutes.
It's not murder.
No, it's not, because then you have to show that he intended or knew it was going to happen for sure, versus a conscious disregard for the result to be reached. So
Yeah, see, I would go that far. I would go that because I happen to know something about epidemiology and basic immunology, and Fauci ran a national infectious disease organization inside NIH for decades. The idea that he didn't know, it's nonsense. He knew exactly what he was doing. And he knew what was going on behind the scenes. He knew agreements that he had signed off on. He knew grants that he had allocated. He knew what those individuals were doing. We know that. And as far as social decency, would you give me a break? I mean, the idea, can you imagine the civil lawsuits? The people that were prevented from seeing their loved ones in their last hours of life because of some bullshit notion that this virus is going to drop you on your ass and kill you in a heartbeat. When we knew when the virus was killing, we knew who they were killing, we knew how many, we knew that it was really sort of relegated to people who were immunocompromised, and in many cases, people who were up in years. We knew that. We knew that it was that body of people, that population should have been quarantined, and no one else. And we knew that he knew because he was saying exactly the opposite prior to the end of March in 2020. He was talking common sense prior to March 31st of 2020 when he was on 60 Minutes, I believe. And after that, all of a sudden, He completely changed his tune. What changed? So science changed in what, 2 weeks? You've been doing this for 40 years? What's going on here? There's obviously something to be politically gained, and he didn't give a shit, and a lot of people suffered as a result. That's the point. I would say there's all the evidence in the world that this guy knew, and he willfully went in a particular direction, and he didn't give a damn what would
Well,
happen.
saying all the evidence in the world, that's a general statement. So I would want to see all that evidence and then move forward. I'm cool with that. I mean, that's a pretty strong statement. Well, but whether he said it and whether he believed what he said, that you have to tie in the mens rea. Remember, you have to tie in that because he said something, you can be mistaken or you can be ignorant, you can just be stupid. But did he know? Was it a willful disregard? And now, if George's point is it can be established, well then, yeah, that's reckless behavior. I mean, you knew what was going to happen.
It's not even that hard.
Endangering a child.
It's not even that hard. CDC is, but we were talking about this on Sidebar at the time, remember? And this is where I think the trail of evidence would be. CDC is writing stuff, and they're out there saying stuff, and they don't align. The 3-foot rule, the 6-foot rule,
The mask
not a
thing.
single one of them believed that.
Yeah.
It was nonsense. It's bullshit voodoo. Fauci among them. He's out there touting it. He knew
So,
it was
but
bullshit
how did the 6-foot rule hurt anybody?
because it grew from there. That's the point. It
well,
grew-
but I'm just saying you have to
It
make
is
the
a
connection.
mindset.
I
He
got it.
advocated a mindset on a scientific premise that was complete bullshit, and he was in a position of authority to be able to do that, and he exploited it.
That was the
And he
sickest part,
knew. He
right.
knew. That's what I meant by all the evidence in the world. From a scientific perspective, this is not an ignorant man. He knew. And so knowing what he knew, because it had been established in every single basic textbook on Basicopedia. I remember you and I talking about it.
know.
I said, Nico, this is a gigantic 180 from what we've ever done as a nation in terms of quarantine policy, whenever there's some sort of epidemiological threat. I mean, what's this guy doing? This doesn't make any sense. And he knew that. And we also had him on interviews. That's why we were talking about, remember masks? Oh, who can forget masks? He's out there literally saying masks will make you feel better.
And then the
But they don't do a damn thing. And a month later, he wants everybody to get masked. And you could do that on all kinds of stuff. And it's like, what changed? What was going on? And so I don't know how you detach that from a political motivation. And I think that's where it ought to go. And so he's everywhere. I mean, he didn't turn down a single interview. This guy had obviously an overinflated view of self. And so I think he knew better, and his claims led to policies that hurt Americans.
Well, what I think is interesting is the left, no one's talking about Fauci. I mean, they had little
right,
monitos
you're
about
right.
him, and they made little bobblehead dolls about him.
Pillows
And
his
the only
face.
bobbling he was doing was bobbing on the left and lying to people. And it was just a disgust. But where is he? I mean, if you believed it, then why isn't he still doing interviews?
Yesterday,
Why isn't he still defending his positions at that time? Because they've been debunked.
right, yesterday Trump took away his 24/7
security service.
security and his limo service. So everybody's like, oh
But he
no,
also
what
put
is he going to
He
do?
also put a stop on all gain of function. He also put a stop on all gain of function research to get our arms around it and find out what's going on here. And of course that was part of a whole series of actions to stop frivolous spending inside the federal government. And I think that's because believe it or not, even until this day, we've been doing gain of function research. I mean, there's evidence.
Explain
of
what that is. Don't assume that everybody knows what that is. Just
Gain of
really
function
explain.
research is where you take an organism and you alter you alter perhaps the genetic structure of that, or the genome of that organism, and you can populate it with properties that could turn that organism into a biological weapon. And so you can make
Further.
Pull it back. You're too close, yeah.
Muffin.
you can make that particular, if you're talking about a viral organism, a respiratory virus, you can alter the genome of the virus.
Make it a
and
weapon.
and you can make it more infectious, for instance. And perhaps infect more people in a more grave manner.
It's a misleading classification. Gain of function is really lack of function. It's going to hurt you. You're going to have.
How
I mean, when
bad
you
can
think.
we make
It depends on your frame of reference.
You know what I'm
If it's
saying?
the organism, you're adding.
But it's
you're adding
essentially creating.
function
It's creating
to
a
the organism.
bioweapon, right?
Sure.
That's the bottom
well,
line.
that begs the question on what is it used for, and then it becomes a bioweapon. That's right. You can have an organism run roughshod through a population much more quickly and lead to much more grave symptoms. And that's really where all this went. And we were talking about, I mean, we have been concerned as a scientific community about leaks from the Wuhan Institute of Virology. It has a history of leaks. One of those, oops, I don't know how that got out there. You remember all the discussion about wet markets?
Oh, God, yes.
Okay.
Yeah,
So
that was
this
ridiculous.
has a long history of some very questionable, quote unquote, scientific and clinical activity, and the reality is that Fauci's been around in the middle of all of it for decades. The man knew better.
It is kind of funny to me that, I mean, not funny. I don't know what word to use, but
Interesting.
interesting. It's a interesting little fact that Fauci, in my mind, when he was testifying, he had such a smirk on his face and such. It was like, you can't touch me. I'm Dr. Fauci. I'm science. And the importance of General Milley also, and the things that Trump did to them, it kind of like took away some of their importance, because I think he pulled down Milley's portrait off of, the walls of whatever, the White House or whatever, and he took away the security because everyone wanted to hurt, Fauci and kill him. And it was sort of funny to me that those are the things he initially did before any investigations.
Yeah, I mean, these seem like pretty aggressive acts, Nico, and I based on what Karen just said, it makes sense to me because these people are dangerous. I mean, they have an authoritarian bent to them that they will literally do whatever the hell they want to do because they never felt like they would be held accountable.
Right.
Getting back to your
Yeah.
point, I think people need to be held accountable. You could just get sent, they just never sensed. I mean, the notion that Trump would ever become the president of the United States again just didn't even faze them.
Yeah, I
I
agree.
mean, you could tell they were conducting themselves in that way. And again, when you go back to Biden, this magical year of 2014, the acts that he was taking, this sort of pay to play, the notion that they would ever be held accountable. I mean, he figures, look, Clinton's doing it. The Clinton Foundation's being used as the Secretary of State and the future president. I mean, shit, she's going to be on the block before I'm on the block, so I get to do this too. So there's just never any sense that they're going to be held accountable for their actions. You can see that's pretty typical. That almost seems like a confession of faith for these individuals. Like rules for everybody else, but not for me. It's a Marxist, communist, socialist mindset. This is pervasive throughout third world countries where a group of individuals has all the power, they have all the decision-making power, and they control the accountability structures of the government. So they're never held accountable. And you could see it. And so I think Trump's actions make sense in light of these are dangerous people. They cannot be trusted with any kind of influence. And he did the same thing to Jim Brennan and those so-called 51 intelligence officials. Yeah. He revoked all of their security clearances.
Good, they should. I mean, it's the least that should happen to them. I mean, I don't know if you wanted to finish, because I mean, I know we're not going to go too much longer, but I got a text message this week by a couple of people about Elon Musk, and I don't know if people are asking about him and his Hitler salute or some shit or whatever the hell it was.
That was so made up.
That was so ridiculous. Because last week someone mentioned it and I responded to them. I don't know if it was Alamo Talk or Mark Antoine. Somebody made a comment and I said, look, if he did, because I didn't know about it, I didn't see it. I don't support that. But then I went back and watched it. Man, that's disingenuous, guys. I mean, really disingenuous. Look, I think most people know that I have a son on the spectrum of autism. And autism spectrum disorder has a spectrum. There's high functioning and there's very low functioning, very severe people where they're hitting their heads and they're banging and they're stemming. Michael's somewhere in the middle. Our son Michael's in the middle where he's potty trained, thank God. He stems verbally, he stems physically. He cannot articulate his words and his thoughts. But someone that's higher functioning, and I think Elon's on the spectrum. I think a lot of people say that, but many of them that are higher functioning, there's autistic savants where they use a certain part of their brain that's like Rain Man was one of 9 at the time autistic savants. That was depicted of a true person, where he had the meltdowns and he had the stemming and repeated himself, but he could count. That was really depicted after a real savant. Mm-hmm. Elon's quirky. He's different. You see him, I mean, there was a meme going around that someone sent to me that the spectrum is wide, meaning that many people say that Barron's on the spectrum. And why Trump was very open to vaccine hesitancy before, and then he got into this fucking, whatever it was, Operation Warp Speed. Sorry, I just get so passionate when I talk about this shit. But Operation Warp Speed, where he lost his mind on that. He was just wrong on that. All that to say, so you see Barron, listening and very stoic, because he's not very expressive. And then you see Elon when they're talking about, I mean, he was just kind of goofy and quirky and just kind of, so you know that about this dude, man. And when he's thanking people that some elections have consequences, some more than others, this one did. I mean, he's awkward, and now he's getting used to being in front of people. I always say I can judge someone how they walk in front of people, how they talk, their expressions. It's just weird. You have to videotape yourself and see, look at yourself. And so I don't want to hit the microphone. He's like, from my heart to yours. You know, it was very, and he said it. It was very apparent. I mean, it's so disingenuous. Like, gosh, enough already. You guys have lost that argument. Make a legitimate argument, back it up with facts, bring that to the American people, to the court of public opinion, and make your case. But with this chicken shit stuff, I mean, he's saying from my heart to yours in his awkward, quirky way. It was, and when I went back and watched it,
So much
I couldn't even find the comment. Look, now, is there an argument that why is he such in the inner circle? I got it. I mean, we didn't talk about that on the radio, but I have an issue with Zuckerberg and Bezos and all these people on stage.
They're liars.
Well, no, because they're
opportunities are
co-conspirators.
opportunists,
They're
yeah.
co-conspirators.
They truly are.
I mean, they don't get. If you're talking about retribution and accountability, they can be restored. I believe in restorative justice, but you don't end up on the damn stage. You're not on the stage. Be in the front row. Be away. You're not on the stage. In my opinion,
I don't think Trump's fooled. I think this is a Godfather move. Keep your enemies close.
I hope so.
Keep your friends close and your
But I
enemies
think
closer.
he could have accomplished it by having him in the front row. If I'm Elon, I'm like, these pieces of shit are with me. I was with you. I risked, you know.
Yeah. Where were they?
I mean,
Where
I don't
were
know.
they, right?
I don't know. I just, they did a lot of damage, man. Zuckerberg. Now, again, I saw Zuckerberg. We talked about it a little bit last week on Rogan. He seems genuine. I don't know his heart. God only knows his heart. But I don't know. That for me, I would not have put him on stage. But who the hell am I? I mean, that's just my 2 cents.
Yeah, and Zuckerberg has admitted that they did what they did because they were afraid and because they were concerned
Fair
about
enough.
government reprisals. I think anybody knows that that's true. The question is, was he really afraid,
changed
or was
an
he
election.
afraid, or was he on board?
Right. He
That-
changed an election.
He absolutely did. So I agree. I noticed that he wasn't pardoned, since we're talking about pardons. But I as far as Elon's concerned, I mean, the guy has always been like that, hasn't he? I mean,
Who?
the gestures.
Elon?
He's always,
Awkward guy.
yeah, and he always seems. My dad said to me, I was talking to him the other day. He goes, "Man, that guy seems happy, like all the time. Like he's always happy." And I'm like, "Dad, if you had $500 billion, it might help your happiness factor." But
Not
he,
necessarily.
you know what
I know.
So, but it's funny because he really does have his pulse. It seems to me on the next step. I mean, he's just truly a visionary. And he gets it, and I love, but he's not pie in the sky. I mean, for him to make the statements that he made about this election, I mean, he's absolutely right that this was
The most consequential
whatever
election.
direction this election went, it was most consequential for Western he's Western civilization.
Yeah, he was right.
He's right because as the United States goes, really so goes the rest of the world.
Yeah, I agree.
And I think for him to make the claims that he made, I mean, I don't care how pie in the sky he is. That's absolutely spot on. So good for him. He's been a huge asset.
Don't you think, though, and I don't want this to happen, but with how emotional Trump is and how emotional Elon Musk is, and they are both on the same path, but I feel like the bromance won't last forever. I feel like there's eventually going to be some sort of butting of heads because both of them are exactly the same when it comes to their plan and their future and how they're going to do it. They're exactly the same in that way. And I think people get mad. They're like, Elon's taking over Trump. No, he's not. He's not because they both are in their own lane. But someday, I just feel like
Yeah,
it
I saw Steve Bannon. Look, I mean, Steve Bannon is an intelligent dude, and he's understands things, but sometimes he's his own worst enemy. And when he was talking about Elon Musk, yeah, you don't get to the table. You have a say so. Yeah, 250 billion, whatever he invested in this. I mean, he gets a little bit more than that.
Yeah.
But then if you don't agree with this, then I'm going to smash your face. And I was like, all right, Steve. And look, I get it, man. He's got PTSD from being persecuted, and he did his months. Thank God it wasn't years in prison. So he's got a right to be a little pissed off. But don't let your good be spoken evil of. And that always resonates with me when I think of situations when I was in office, when I'm doing the right thing. But you don't want to do the right thing the wrong way. Because if you do the right thing the wrong way, it appears like it's the wrong thing. And it may be the wrong thing. And that's temperance, and that's wisdom. We call it, as Christians, we call that discernment. So, you know, I hope Trump said, hey, Elon, I want you to be an advisor, but I'm still the president. You know that, right? I mean, you run Tesla. I won't tell you what to do with Tesla. Don't tell me what to do with this country. But I really value your opinion. And Trump's really good at giving people praise. he gives people praise because ultimately he praises himself for having the right people around him, which is good though. It's okay. You got to work with it. You got to work with what you're given. Look,
I'm just thinking because where's Vivek? That's what I keep on wondering. Like, what happened?
he's gonna run for governor.
That's a good
I
one.
mean, well, I mean, that's a hell of an exit strategy.
Yeah.
I'm pissed off at you, but instead of to look good, let me run for governor. No, I mean, that's a big move. I mean, so that's something. Now, was there maybe healthy tension? Maybe. Was he not lifting heavy weight? I don't know what the hell the argument was. Who gives a shit? I'm used to conflict. It doesn't bother me. I was in this big meeting on this high profile case, and another lawyer said, these people are yelling and they're calling me names, and they were talking to the agents and the prosecutors, and then they looked at me and was like, I don't know, it didn't bother me one bit. I mean, I don't know, and I'm wired differently. I mean, I'm cautious. I mean, I've had threats and all that being in the positions I've been in, and I do things to protect myself and I train. But, I mean, conflict doesn't bother me. I'm comfortable in conflict. I want to avoid it, but I'm very comfortable in conflict. Now, because I'm comfortable in conflict, I have a flesh tendency to not act appropriate in conflict because I don't look for it, but I don't run from it.
Right.
And so my strength can be a weakness. What do we always say? Every strength taken to an extreme can be a weakness. Yes. And so that's where wisdom comes in, and that's why Scripture talks about wisdom and how beautiful she is, and we get into Proverbs and just we need wisdom. And I'm hoping that Trump, and that's what we've been praying for, that people around him are giving him good wisdom, good advice.
You know, at the heart of every conflict is a difference in priorities. And I think they had slightly different priorities. There's been multiple reports in conservative and liberal media that in terms of Doge, what they were going to focus on, how intensely, and priorities. Priorities, okay. But Vivek clearly has political aspirations, right? Government of Ohio, so good for him. I wish him well. I think it would be fantastic.
Any comments?
Mike DeWine is on his way out,
Who?
so
Mike DeWine is?
Mike DeWine's on his way out. I think
And
he's termed out. So
has been confirmed, but is that right?
Oh, I don't know. I hope so. I think that was an easy one. She did badass on her confirmation hearing. I mean, literally did badass. She did great. I mean, and I've been critical, but she did excellent on the confirmation hearing. That's good. I hope she has. What else? Anything else? Well, I gotta go.
Let's tune out.
I gotta go.
Okay.
Speaking of conflict, my kids have to boxing class.
That's best. That's best.
We gotta
Number
go train.
one.
We gotta go train. Yeah. Hey guys, thanks for joining in. Sorry for the audible. We had to do the audible. Salo, thank you for adjusting, and everyone that helped out. We hope you enjoyed this. Again, share this with someone you think may benefit from it. Make comments. I try to look at comments and respond when I can, as much as I can, but then pulled away. But it's really a full-time job to look at comments and respond to them. It was tough when I was in office. It's tough doing it now and then keeping track of everything. But make comments. I think Salo looks at them or in messaging or things of that nature, and we're happy to address issues that you want to address. God bless you guys. Have a wonderful weekend.